They spoke his name the way people speak of a winter illness, quietly, as if sound itself could invite it nearer. Valkorin, the monster king of Eredh Vale. In the river towns, mothers bolted shutters before sunset. Priests rang thin silver bells. Travelers tied garlic and hawthorn to their saddles, not because they believed, but because fear is a kind of faith all its own. When the moon rose pale and clear, people swore they saw a tall figure on Blackthorn Pass, watching like a patient storm. The story said he drank villages dry, that he could turn your blood cold with a glance, that he wore a crown made of hunger. But in my life, the worst harm I'd seen came from ordinary hands, fearful hands, never from his. I was only a courier with a satchel of letters and a tired mule, crossing towns tightened by worry. The river ran low, the fields turned thin, and people blamed Valkorin for everything they couldn't fix. The morning I first brushed against the truth, I crossed the stone bridge at Harrowford. Mist lay over the water like a blanket. Near the bank, something small shifted between the stones. A child. He was about 7, clothes too big, hands too cold. He didn't cry. He just watched me with eyes that had learned silence for safety. I knelt, palms open. "Are you lost?" He swallowed. They said, "The king takes children." His fear sounded old, practiced, like he'd been told the same warning until it became law. Still, he'd come here as if there was nowhere else to go. "What's your name?" "Leo." "Where are your people, Leo?" "I don't have them anymore." I should have taken him back to Harrowford and demanded help. But I knew the steward there, he would measure the cost, then turn the boy into labor that paid in stale bread. So I wrapped Leo in my spare cloak and lifted him onto the mule. "We'll go somewhere you can sleep without listening for footsteps," I promised, though I didn't yet know where. As we left the bridge, I noticed a symbol carved into the post, a crescent moon cradling a drop, and beneath it a line like a closed eye. It didn't look like a warning. It looked like a promise. By dusk we reached Grey Pine, a hamlet of tired roofs and thin smoke. People watched us pass as if trouble had its own shadow. At the inn, the keeper served broth without warmth. Her eyes lingered on Leo's pale mouth and trembling fingers. "Fever," I said quickly. "The pale sickness," she whispered, crossing herself. "You shouldn't travel with it." "It's only cold," I lied. She hesitated, then slid me a packet of dried herbs. "Brew this. It helps. Don't tell anyone I gave it." Upstairs, Leo fell asleep fast, but even asleep his brow stayed tense, as if waking was the harder thing. I sat by the window and watched the road. Moonlight spilled over the village, and everything felt too quiet, like the world was holding its breath. That's when I saw 3 figures at the edge of Grey Pine, moving between trees. Not locals. One carried a sack. Another held a hooded lantern, keeping the light small. Thieves, I thought. Or men who used fear as cover. My hand found the little knife in my satchel, more habit than protection. Then something else moved, soft as snow. A tall man stepped from the shadow of the oldest oak. No armor. No crown. A long dark coat that didn't perform for the wind. He stood like the night itself had made space for him. The 3 men froze. Even from my window, I felt the depth of him, immense, not threatening. like standing beside a lake and realizing how much water waits beneath the surface. One man lifted his lantern with a shaking bravado. "Go back. This isn't your..." The tall man raised one hand. Not to strike. Not to command. To stop. The gesture was oddly gentle, like a teacher quieting a room. He spoke, but his voice didn't carry. It felt intentional, as if he refused to let fear spread by sound. The men shifted, their certainty loosening. The youngest looked like he might cry. Then the tall man reached into his coat and held out a small pouch. Coins, maybe. Food. The leader took it with stiff fingers, ashamed. The tall man pointed away from the hamlet toward the main road, an instruction, a warning, and offered direction instead of punishment. The three backed away. Not chased. Not hunted. Dismissed. When they vanished into the trees, the tall man tilted his face toward the inn. For a heartbeat I thought he looked straight at my window. Not with hunger. With tired attention, like he'd noticed the light and hoped it meant someone inside was safe. Then he was gone. No thunder, no theatrics. Just absence. In the morning I asked the innkeeper if she'd seen anyone outside. Only the wind, she said too quickly. Then, softer, and the one who keeps it polite. She didn't say Valkorin's name. But we both heard it. We traveled north, the direction all the stories pointed, toward Eredh Vale and the castle that sat above the forest like a thought no one could forget. I told myself it was just my route. But truthfully, I wanted to understand. Leo grew stronger day by day. He spoke more. He began naming birds as we walked, as if naming a thing made it stay. On the third day, rain came slow and soaking. The road turned slick, and my mule slipped twice. I worried about shelter before night, until we saw a small cottage among birch trees. No smoke. Yet the door wasn't barred. An unlit lantern hung on the fence post, freshly oiled. On a sign swung that same symbol, crescent, drop, closed eye. We knocked. No answer. I pushed the door open. Inside wasn't fire warm, but it was prepared, folded blankets, dry wood, oats, salt, cheese wrapped in cloth. Everything set as if someone expected strangers who would arrive shaking and ashamed of needing help. On the table lay a letter sealed with plain wax, addressed only to whoever comes. I broke it because the rain drummed hard and Leo shivered. If you are reading this, you have already decided to live. Eat. Rest. Take what you need, and leave what you can. If you are pursued, you will not be found here. The birches remember kindness. V. My throat tightened at the single letter. Not a threat. Not a title. Just V, modest as a shadow. Leo traced the wax with one finger. Is it him? I think so, I whispered. Why would a monster do this? I looked at the small bowl set out like someone had imagined a child's hunger. Maybe because he knows fear, I said. And he refuses to serve it. When the rain eased, we took only what we needed. I left coins behind. Leo left his bright blue ribbon, frayed, stubbornly cheerful, on the table like a quiet thank you. As we stepped out, I noticed words carved inside the doorframe, where only a leaving traveler would see. Do not thank me. Be gentle to the living. It wasn't the language of a tyrant. It was the language of someone who had learned gentleness the hard way, and chose it anyway. Near Eredh Vale, villages grew scarce. The woods thickened, and even birds sounded quieter, not from terror, but from listening. At a well, a woman told me in a whisper, "He takes a tithe. We leave it at the border. If we don't." "What tithe?" Her mouth tightened. "Blood. Do you know anyone taken?" "No," she admitted, then leaned on old certainty like a crutch. "But my grandmother said." "Grandmothers say many things," I replied gently. "Sometimes to keep children from wandering." That night we found the tithe stone, a flat, marked with a crescent and drop. On it sat sealed jars, each labeled with a name and a date. Offerings. Not stolen. Beside them were loaves, herbs, and once a chipped toy horse. In a niche under the stone lay letters weighted with a smooth river rock. I read a few, my hands careful as if the paper might bruise. "Your daughter's fever will break before the third dawn. Keep her warm. Do not let the priest bleed her to let the sickness out. He is frightened and will call fear wisdom. V. The wolves that circled your pen were driven away. Mend the fence anyway. Not all wolves have full legs. V. Your husband returned from the war with a hollow look. Do not try to fill it with noise. Sit with him. Let silence be a blanket, not a punishment. V. Small mercies. Private guidance. Protection done without applause. Leo leaned close. He writes like he knows people. He does, I said. Enough to help them when they don't even know they're being helped. I put the letters back. They weren't meant for me. But the question had rooted itself in my chest. If he could do all this unseen, why let the world keep calling him a monster? On the sixth dusk we reached the castle. It wasn't jagged or theatrical. It was old stone darkened by weather, ivy climbing patiently, windows narrow like thoughtful eyes. It felt less like a threat and more like a weary sentinel. And the gate was open. No guards. No hounds. The air felt controlled, not oppressive, but carefully kept, like someone had spent years ensuring harm didn't spill out into the world. Leo squeezed my hand. Do we go in? I should have turned back. But gratitude is a strange compass. It points you toward the one who saved you, even if you were taught to fear them. The great doors opened with a soft sigh. Inside, lamplight glowed amber. The air smelled of cedar and old books. Hello? I called. We mean no harm. Footsteps came down a curved stair, unhurried, measured. The man who appeared was the one I'd seen in grey pine. Black hair touched with silver, pale skin, eyes deep and steady. Up close he looked less like a nightmare and more like a long-held sorrow wearing good manners. He looked at Leo first, careful, concerned, then at me. You traveled far, he said softly. Are you King Valkorin? A pause, as if the title didn't fit. I am Valkorin, he replied. If you prefer the rest, you may keep it. Most do. I found him on a bridge, I said, nodding toward Leo. He was afraid. They told him you take children. Something dimmed in Valkorin's eyes, in not anger. An old bruise. I do not, he said simply. Then why do they believe it? He turned to a bowl of water on a table and wiped the rim with a cloth, an ordinary gesture that made him feel startlingly real. Because fear needs a shape, he said. And I am convenient. He faced us again. May I, he asked, gesturing to Leo's wrist. Leo hesitated. I nodded. Valkorin took the child's hand gently and closed his eyes for a moment, listening, not to blood, I realized, but to life. Then he let go. He is hungry, Valkorin said. Leo's stomach growled, loud in the quiet hall. The boy flushed. Valkorin's mouth softened. So am I, he admitted, and that simple honesty felt like a door opening. I held my breath. You drink blood. I do, he said, calm and plain. But not as your stories paint it. Not taken. Not forced. He nodded toward a side door. Soup is in the kitchen. Bread as well. Sit. We followed. A small fire. A simmering pot. Valkorin himself ladled soup, set bread, poured water. No servants. No ceremony. Just a feared king feeding strangers because they were hungry. When we'd eaten, he asked, why did you come? Because I've seen what you do, I said. Grapine. The cottage. The letters. You keep people safe, and they still fear you. I needed to know why. He looked down at his steady hands. Because I remember what it was to be human, he said. Then, quietly, he told us he'd once had a mother, an ordinary name, ordinary once. He became cursed, and for a time he believed hunger would erase everything. It nearly did. Until an old healer met his eyes and did not scream. She taught him how to endure with care, how to accept only what is given, how to step back when craving sharpened, how to help without turning help into a chain. It is not heroism, he said at last. It is maintenance. Like tending a garden no one thanks you for. Why not show them? I asked. Why let them hate you? His sadness was quiet, practiced. Because if I step into their light, they will draw swords first and listen later, he said. They will kill their own gentleness trying to prove they are not afraid. I will not make them do that. Leo's voice came small and honest. Are you lonely? Valkorin blinked slowly. Yes, he said. Often. Then why don't you take someone so you're not? Valkorin answered like a whisper that still filled the room. Because taking would make me what they fear. And I would rather be lonely than become that. In that moment, I understood his sacrifice. Not dramatic battles. Not grand speeches. Restraint. Choosing gentleness night after night in a world determined to misunderstand him. Valkorin opened a cabinet and brought out a cloth bundle. Inside lay a thin silver pendant marked with the crescent and drop. This belonged to the healer, he said. She asked me to keep doing what I could, quietly. He slid it toward me. Take it. I can't. You can, he said with calm certainty. You are not cursed. Your kindness will be believed more easily than mine. Wear it. Help the lost. Offer truth without scorn. I looked at Leo, warm, fed, alive. "What about him?" I asked. "If you will keep him, Valkorin said. "If you cannot, he may stay. There are rooms here that have not heard laughter in a long time." Leo's eyes widened. "Would I be safe?" "Yes," Valkorin said. "No vow dressed in glory. Just yes." We left before dawn. Valkorin walked us to the doors, fatigue foamed at the edges of him like a tide held back by will. Outside, the first light turned the sky the color of watered wine. Mist rose from the grass. At the threshold I looked back. "They'll never know," I said. "Some will," he answered. "Not all truths arrive as announcements. Sometimes they arrive as warmth in a storm, and later you realize it saved you." Leo stepped forward and held out his bright blue ribbon. "For you," he said. "So you're not only dark." Valkorin took it slowly, as if receiving kindness was harder than giving it. "Thank you," he said, and for the first time, emotion slipped through his careful voice, small and unmistakably human. We walked away as the sun climbed. The road felt not safer, but truer. In the weeks that followed, I wore the silver pendant beneath my shirt. I left small kindnesses along my route, bread under a stone, notes about safe water, coins pressed into an innkeeper's palm when she fed someone who couldn't pay. I kept Leo with me. When nightmares woke him, I sat beside him in silence until his breathing smoothed, remembering one line from those letters, "Let silence be a blanket."